The NFL isn't always fun and games. Sometimes life hits harder than any tackle. From Marquise Goodwin, who played just hours after losing his unborn son.
Just hours earlier, he and his wife lost their newborn son.
To Torrey Smith, who caught pass after pass hours after his brother died in a motorcycle crash.
Tevin was killed in a motorcycle accident in northeastern Virginia.
These are the NFL players whose heartbreak left everyone around them in tears. Marquise Goodwin. Marquise Goodwin was known in the NFL as one of the fastest athletes on the field, but his saddest moment had nothing to do with speed, stats, or wins. It came on November 12, 2017, and it left players, coaches, and fans in tears. Goodwin wasn't just an NFL wide receiver. He was also an elite track and field athlete. Before the league, he won 2 national championships in the long jump at Texas and represented the United States in multiple international competitions, including the Olympics and the World Championships. Football was only one part of his identity, but on that Sunday in 2017, it became the stage for a moment that would define his career. Early that morning, Goodwin's wife, Morgan, went into premature labor at 19 weeks. Their son, Marquise Jr., was delivered stillborn due to undeveloped lungs. The loss happened just hours before the 49ers were scheduled to play the New York Giants. Most players would have stayed home. Teammates expected him not to play. Goodwin had told them his wife was dealing with complications, and they had rallied around him, telling him they would support whatever decision he made. After praying together, Morgan encouraged him to play. So Goodwin arrived at the stadium with no sleep and little preparation, and told head coach Kyle Shanahan he was ready. Midway through the second quarter, the 49ers were struggling offensively. Facing 3rd and 10, Shanahan called a deep pass designed for Goodwin. The play almost didn't happen. The protection barely held, and Shanahan admitted later he thought it was doomed, but quarterback C.J. Beathard stepped under center, dropped back, and launched the ball deep. Goodwin beat his defender and caught the pass around midfield. As he sprinted into the end zone for an 83-yard touchdown, the moment became something else entirely. Just before crossing the goal line, he blew a kiss toward the sky. Then he dropped to his knees in prayer. Players immediately surrounded him. Many were crying. Kendrick Bourne later said he knew exactly what the play meant the second the ball left Beathard's hand. The 49ers won the game. Goodwin left quickly to return to his wife and later revealed the loss on Instagram. Torrey Smith. Torrey Smith built his NFL reputation on speed, toughness, and big moments, but the saddest moment of his career had nothing to do with football. It came on September 23, 2012, and it left an entire locker room shaken. Smith wasn't just a rising star wide receiver for the Baltimore Ravens. He was also a big brother who had spent much of his life acting as a father figure to his younger siblings. That role made what happened next unbearable. Early Sunday morning, just hours before a massive Sunday night football game against the New England Patriots, Smith received a phone call that changed everything. His 19-year-old brother, Tevin Jones, had been killed in a motorcycle accident in Virginia. Smith left the team hotel at around 2 a.m., escorted by team security to be with his family. Most players assumed he was done for the day, but later that morning, Smith told head coach John Harbaugh that he wanted to play. Harbaugh made it clear the decision was entirely his. Smith chose football as a way to cope, even though the weight of grief was overwhelming. When teammates found out, many struggled to process it. Ray Rice later admitted he couldn't imagine stepping on the field under those circumstances. Also, Ray Lewis said there was a strange calm around Smith, something that commanded respect and silence. That night, Smith didn't just play. He delivered one of the most emotional performances of the season. He caught 6 passes for 127 yards and scored 2 touchdowns in a dramatic 31-30 win over the Patriots. Every catch felt heavier than the last. There were no celebrations, just focus and pain held together by discipline. On the sideline, teammates watched with tears in their eyes. After the game, the emotion finally broke through. Smith spoke quietly, later tweeting about his love for his brother and the emptiness he felt once the game ended. Brett Favre. Brett Favre was known in the NFL as the ultimate Iron Man, tough, fearless, and emotionally unbreakable. But the saddest moment of his career had nothing to do with interceptions, championships, or records. It came on December 22, 2003, and it turned a Monday night football game into one of the most emotional scenes the league has ever witnessed. Favre wasn't just the Green Bay Packers quarterback. He was the face of the franchise, the heartbeat of the team, and a player defined by resilience. success. Football had always been personal for him because it was something he shared deeply with his father, Irvin Favre. Irvin wasn't just a parent, he was Brett's first coach, his biggest critic, and his strongest supporter. Their bond was built on football, discipline, and toughness. Just one day before the Packers were scheduled to face the Oakland Raiders, tragedy struck. Favre learned that his father had suffered a sudden heart attack and passed away. The news shattered him. Teammates immediately assumed he wouldn't play. So Favre flew home to be with his family, barely sleeping, barely eating. Then, after talking with his mother, he made a decision that stunned everyone. He believed his father would have wanted him on the field, so he returned to Green Bay and told head coach Mike Sherman he was playing. From the opening drive, it was clear something extraordinary was happening. Favre played with raw emotion, channeling grief into focus. Pass after pass found its target. By halftime, he had already thrown for 311 yards and 4 touchdowns. By the end of the night, Favre finished with 399 passing yards and 4 touchdowns in a dominant 41-7 win. But the stats weren't what made players cry. Throughout the game, cameras caught Favre fighting back tears on the sideline. Even Raiders defenders later admitted they were in awe. The Oakland crowd, normally hostile, gave Favre a standing ovation. After the game, Favre broke down during his interview, calling his father the best coach I ever had. Teammates stood nearby, many of them crying openly. Sean Taylor. Sean Taylor was known in the NFL as one of the most feared defenders on the field, but the saddest moment tied to his name had nothing to do with hits, interceptions, or Pro Bowls. It came in December 2007, and it left an entire team in tears. Taylor wasn't just another safety. Drafted 5th overall by the Washington Redskins in 2004, he quickly became the emotional engine of the defense. Teammates called him Meast, short for half man, half beast, because of how violently and instinctively he played the game. He was intense, loyal, and deeply connected to his teammates. By 2006, he had earned a Pro Bowl selection and was entering the prime of his career. Washington believed he would anchor their defense for the next decade, but that future was stolen suddenly and brutally. On the night of November 26, 2007, Taylor was at home in Miami with his fiancée and young daughter when intruders broke in. While confronting them, Taylor was shot in the leg. The bullet severed his femoral artery. Despite emergency surgery, he died the next day at just 24 years old. The news sent shockwaves through the NFL. Players across the league were stunned. Many couldn't believe it was real. 6 days later, the Redskins returned to the field for their first game since his death, facing the Buffalo Bills. FedEx Field felt different that day. A long video tribute played before kickoff, and many in the crowd were already crying. Then came the moment that broke everyone. On the very first defensive snap, Washington lined up with only 10 players. Sean Taylor's safety position was left empty. The ball was snapped, the Bills ran a simple play, and the Redskins intentionally gave up yards, but no one cared. Teammates stared at the vacant spot where Taylor should have been. Cornerback Fred Smoot later admitted he felt overwhelming guilt and grief, saying it felt like they had let their brother down. Players on both sidelines were emotional. Some looked to the sky. Others wiped tears from their eyes between plays. This wasn't football anymore. It was mourning in uniform. Chuck Hughes. Chuck Hughes was never a superstar in the NFL, but his saddest moment became one of the most haunting scenes in league history. It happened on October 24, 1971, and it remains the only time an NFL player has died on the field during a game. What made it so devastating wasn't just the tragedy itself, but how suddenly and quietly it unfolded in front of players who didn't yet realize they were watching a man's final moments. Hughes was a wide receiver for the Detroit Lions, a role player who mostly contributed on special teams and as a backup. Before the NFL, he had been a dominant college athlete at Texas Western, setting records that still stand. But by 1971, his professional career was defined more by persistence than fame. That season, Hughes had already been dealing with unexplained health problems. He collapsed in the locker room during a preseason game in August and was hospitalized. Doctors suspected a spleen injury, but failed to diagnose the real issue. Hughes continued to complain of chest chest pain and fatigue, believing it was acid reflux. Despite not feeling right, he kept playing. Late in the fourth quarter against the Chicago Bears, Detroit was driving, trailing 28-23. Hughes entered the game as an injury replacement. With just over a minute left, he caught a 32-yard pass from quarterback Greg Landry, pushing the Lions into Bears territory. It was a routine play, nothing dramatic. 3 plays later, as Hughes jogged back toward the huddle near the 20-yard line, he suddenly collapsed. Players froze. Hughes began convulsing on the turf, clutching his chest. Bears linebacker Dick Butkus, standing nearby, immediately realized something was terribly wrong and frantically waved for medical help. An ambulance eventually arrived and took Hughes to Henry Ford Hospital. At 5:34 p.m., Hughes was pronounced dead at just 28 years old. He had suffered a massive heart attack caused by advanced, undiagnosed arteriosclerosis. When teammates learned what had happened, many broke down. All 40 Lions players attended his funeral. Hughes left behind a wife and a 2-year-old son. Damar Hamlin. Damar Hamlin was still early in his NFL career, but his saddest moment instantly became one of the most emotional scenes the league has ever witnessed. It happened on January 2nd, 2023, during a Monday Night Football game between the Buffalo Bills and the Cincinnati Bengals. What began as a routine primetime matchup suddenly turned into a nightmare that left players from both teams crying, praying, and fearing the worst. Midway through the first quarter, Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow completed a short pass to wide receiver T. Higgins near midfield. Higgins turned upfield, and Hamlin stepped in to make the tackle. It looked ordinary. Hamlin wrapped him up, absorbed the contact, stood back up on his feet, and then collapsed backward onto the turf. No one understood what they were seeing at first. Within seconds, Bills trainers and medical staff sprinted onto the field. Hamlin lay motionless. CPR began almost immediately. An AED was brought out. For nearly 10 minutes, first responders worked on Hamlin's body while players stood frozen, watching their teammate fight for his life in front of them. Veterans from both teams instinctively formed a human shield around Hamlin to give him privacy. Some players dropped to their knees, others openly sobbed. Bills quarterback Josh Allen stood on the sideline with his hands over his mouth, unable to look away. Defensive back Tre'Davious White cried uncontrollably, later saying he felt helpless watching his brother on the ground. Bengals players were just as shaken. The game was suspended and eventually postponed, a rare decision that reflected the gravity of the moment. Hamlin was rushed to the University of Cincinnati Medical Center in critical condition. It was later revealed he had suffered cardiac arrest caused by commotio cordis, an extremely rare condition where a blow to the chest disrupts the heart's rhythm. Without immediate CPR, the condition is almost always fatal. In the hours that followed, the NFL world came together. Players, coaches, and fans prayed. Hamlin's charity toy drive fundraiser exploded from a $2,500 goal to millions of dollars in donations overnight, each message filled with hope and fear. Hamlin eventually recovered and returned to football, but that night remains unforgettable. DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins was known in the NFL for his hands, his body control, and his ability to make catches that didn't seem physically possible. But the saddest moment of his career wasn't about stats or highlights. It was about his mother and a single play that made grown men cry on the sideline. Hopkins' life was shaped by tragedy long before he reached the NFL. His father died in a car accident when DeAndre was just 5 months old, leaving his mother, Sabrina Greenlee, to raise 4 children alone. She became his hero, his motivation, and the reason he never quit. Then, when Hopkins was just 10 years old, his world was shattered again. In 2002, Greenlee was attacked by a woman involved with her boyfriend. A boiling mixture of bleach and lye was thrown directly onto her face, neck, and back. The burns were so severe that her skin peeled away, and she was left permanently blind. From that moment on, football became something deeper for Hopkins. His mother could no longer watch him play, so he created a ritual just for her. Every time he scored a touchdown, he would take the ball straight to the sideline and place it into her hands. It was his way of keeping her close. That history made one moment in November 2020 devastatingly powerful. Playing for the Arizona Cardinals against the Buffalo Bills, Hopkins lined up in the end zone with the Cardinals trailing late. Quarterback Kyler Murray launched a desperate Hail Mary pass into a crowd of defenders. 3 Bills defenders went up for the ball. Hopkins went up higher. Somehow, with one hand, he came down with it in the back of of the end zone. The stadium exploded. But on the sideline, something else happened. Deshaun Watson, Hopkins' former quarterback and close friend, was shown crying. He wasn't crying because of a great catch. He was crying because he knew what it meant. He knew Hopkins' story. J.J. Watt was known in the NFL as one of the most dominant defenders of his generation, but his saddest moment had nothing to do with sacks, awards, or records. It came in January 2023 during the final game of his career, and it left players, coaches, and fans openly emotional. Watt wasn't just a great defensive end. He was the face of a franchise, a three-time Defensive Player of the Year, and a player whose effort defined him as much as his talent. That final Sunday with the Arizona Cardinals became the emotional closing chapter of everything he had built. Watt had announced his retirement just days earlier. The timing made it even heavier. Only weeks before, he and his wife, Kealia, had welcomed their first child, a son named Koa. Football was no longer the only thing shaping his life. Teammates knew this was it, and Watt himself admitted later that he wasn't ready for how hard it would hit. Before taking the field against the San Francisco 49ers, the Cardinals surprised Watt with a tribute video captured by HBO's Hard Knocks. When the video ended, Watt sat there silently, overwhelmed, fighting tears he couldn't stop. He later called it one of the greatest gifts he had ever received. The game itself only added to the emotion. Watt refused to coast. He played like it mattered, recording 2 sacks and constantly pushing the pocket. Late in the fourth quarter, he was subbed out for the final time. As he walked toward the sideline, something unexpected happened. The opposing 49ers crowd stood up and applauded. A full standing ovation. Watt lowered his head, his face tight with emotion. Even rivals understood the moment. Al Davis was one of the most powerful and influential figures the NFL had ever seen, but his saddest moment had nothing to do with championships, controversy, or the Raiders' dominance. It came on October 9, 2011, and it left players, coaches, and an entire franchise in tears. Davis wasn't just an owner, he was with the Oakland Raiders. For 39 years, he controlled nearly every aspect of the organization, serving at different points as a scout, head coach, general manager, commissioner, and finally principal owner. His motto, "Just win, baby," wasn't a slogan. It was a way of life. The day before that game, Al Davis passed away at age 82 in Oakland after years of declining health. His death sent shockwaves through the Raiders organization. Players described the locker room as quiet and heavy. Coaches struggled to focus. For many of them, Davis wasn't just a boss. He was a mentor, a protector, and for some, a father figure. John Madden famously said, "You don't replace a guy like that. No way. No damn way." Despite the grief, the Raiders still had to play. Just one day after Davis's death, they took the field against the Houston Texans. They wore black decals with Al on their helmets. The game itself was tense and emotional. Oakland led late in the fourth quarter, but the Texans were driving. On the final play, with the outcome hanging in the balance, Raiders safety Michael Huff intercepted Matt Schaub in the end zone to seal the victory. What made the moment even more unbelievable was that the Raiders only had 10 defenders on the field. As soon as the interception happened, emotions poured out. Players dropped to their knees. Coaches cried openly. Head coach Hugh Jackson was overwhelmed, later saying, "Only Al Davis," and insisting Davis had his hand on the ball. Some even called it the divine interception, believing Davis was the unseen 11th man on the field. Eric Berry was known in the NFL as one of the most dominant safeties of his generation, but his saddest and most emotional moment had nothing to do with hits, interceptions, or awards. It came after a battle far bigger than football, and it left teammates, coaches, and fans in tears. When the Kansas City Chiefs selected him 5th overall in the 2010 draft, he quickly became the heart and soul of the defense. That identity was nearly taken away in December 2014. Shortly after a game against the Raiders, doctors discovered a mass in Berry's chest. Days later, he was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. His season ended immediately. Chemotherapy followed. Berry later admitted there were nights he couldn't stop crying, leaning on his mother, Carol, for strength during the darkest moments. By May of 2015, Berry completed treatment. A month later, doctors declared him cancer-free. When he returned to the Chiefs that summer, simply being around football again overwhelmed him. On the flight to Phoenix before a preseason game, Berry Barry broke down in tears, realizing he would once again smell the grass, hear the crowd, and stand in the locker room with his teammates. When Barry finally stepped back onto the field, the emotion was impossible to ignore. Before the preseason opener, he shared a long, tearful hug with his mother on the sideline. Barry didn't just return, he dominated. In the 2015 season, he played at an elite level, earning Pro Bowl and All-Pro honors and winning Comeback Player of the Year. But the most emotional moment came in December 2016, in his hometown of Atlanta. Late in the game, Barry intercepted a pass and returned it for a game-sealing touchdown. After crossing the goal line, he handed the ball to his mother in the stands. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section, and before you leave, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to NFL Rivals so you don't miss the next ones.